It is late winter in my area, first part of April. Looking forward to spring, seeing some color. Got some touch up we want to do on this bed. Adding mulch is one of the main things, and nothing's going to freshen up your landscape bed like some fresh mulch. But first I want to give you an overview, and then we'll come back and visit each one in just a little bit more detail. Okay, we'll start with my little Easter Island head. I love that little statue. Okay, Mango Tango. That's a Mango Tango Potentilla. We've got a Silver Whispers Swiss Stone Pine. This is one of the Scotch Pine varieties. Supposed to have a golden color all year long. We're not quite seeing that. Russian olive. This is going to be one of the bigger trees in this bed. This is a Russian Dwarf Almond shrub. Beautiful pink flower. Buffalo juniper down here. Another patch of iris. We might have to dig those up. This is a Highland Splendor's Bugle Pine, similar to the Tanon Bomb. We'll show you some of the characteristics on that, why we planted it. Summer wine, 9 bark, and then back off in the distance here, we've got a North Pole Arbor. This is Mango Tango Potentilla, and most of the Potentillas, they're named for the different flower colors. That's the main thing about them. You can get different shades of the yellow, the pink, the white. Mango Tango, pretty descriptive on that color, kind of got more of an orangey color to it. We've already done some light shearing on this. I took off probably about 6 inches, and that's usually what I do on Potentillas until they start getting leggy. But if you just take off that 6 to 8 inches every spring, you're going to encourage that new growth, fresh set of flowers, and that's just how I like to handle the Potentillas. You can cut them back, pretty severe and rejuvenate them. I don't think they rebound quite as quickly as a Spirea, but yeah, make sure to go ahead and get in there each spring and give those Potentillas just a light shearing. This is doing great here. And Silver Whispers Swiss Stone Pine. The Swiss Stone Pines are in the Cimbra species, and I've got some tip burning. I think it's because of my well water. I think it's higher in some of the salts. It's only about 75 feet deep. And I'm noticing it also in some of my yellow Norway spruce. It seems like the plant overall is healthy. I've had a little bit more needle shed on some of the inner branches than I expected. But overall, it's hanging in here, doing quite well. Been in here about 5 years now. I believe I planted this from about a 3-foot level. So the Silver Whispers Swiss Stone Pine. I've got a video I did on a few other Swiss Stone Pines. I'll throw that in the description for you. And a conifer right next to it here, we've got Troll Gould Scotch Pine. And it's supposed to have a bright yellow needle all through the season. I'm noticing it a little bit more on the newer growth and getting more into a deeper green, just normal Scotch color on the inner type needles. And this is eventually going to be about a 5-foot broad, upright, conical plant. So just perfect for this area. Doing wonderful. I lost a pyramidal Scotch pine that I planted a couple years ago, and that was unfortunate, so I'm really happy to see that this Scotch pine's doing nicely. There's times where I'm adding the mulch right within like a riprap area like this. I don't mind if they intermingle, but where I've got rock, and especially smaller decorative rock, where I kind of blend different beds together, I try to make sure I keep the rock beds on the high side, because if you put the mulch on the top, wind, rain, it can float into that rock. And the Russian olive. Yeah, this is considered kind of a scrappy tree, kind of invasive in some areas. I happen to really like the Russian olive. I think it's, one of my favorite trees, quite honestly. Let's take a look at why. Okay, let's start with that gaping wound there. A couple years ago, we did have a windstorm came up, and it knocked down one of the main branches on this tree. It actually was kind of a blessing in disguise. I think it really, really opened up this area. It was going to be shading a lot of these different plants. You'll also notice as I back off here, it's got an angle on the trunk. I let that happen on purpose. One of my favorite trees on the college campus I went to was a Russian olive, and it had this long trunk. I would bet it was about 20 feet. And obviously it must have been laid down in a storm or something, and they just let it kind of do its natural thing. And I don't know, I just loved it. So when the wind knocked this thing over halfway, I left it, and I thought that's going to remind me of those younger days. But the Russian olive, I think a really nice bark, kind of stringy, that diamond shape in it. This is a tough wood. If you ever want to cut it with a chainsaw, be ready. It's really hard to slice through. It obviously gets its name because it has a foliage and a fruit similar to the olive. Nice silvery foliage which stands out. It does have a thorn, a pretty vicious thorn. If you drive over some of those spikes, You can actually pop a tire with them. So that's one of the drawbacks, but this tree is so hardy, tolerates high pH and just some of the worst soils. So if you treat it right with good water, fertilizer, it actually looks really nice. I'm not saying you're never going to have to prune some of the gnarly branches out of there. I mostly use the Western red cedar mulches since they are readily available in my area, slow to break down with that nice golden brown color, as well as still being one of the more affordable mulches. If you've got it planted out in an area where it's on its own, it'll survive, but yeah, it can look pretty scrappy. But the Russian olive, we do deal with quite a bit of the fruits dropping, but I tell you what, the birds absolutely love this fruit. And I've also got a squirrel coming over, and he's harvesting and using a lot of these different Russian olive seeds for his nourishment. Unfortunately, my dog likes them too. And okay, now right below here we've got some iris that we transplanted last fall. Last fall then we dug out a massive clump of iris here, divided it all apart, probably had over 50 of the different rhizomes. And what happens with iris over time, as they spread out, they don't bloom as much on those inner rhizomes anymore. So we divided them, transplanted them, did it according to what you'll normally read, where you keep the top part of that iris exposed to the sun to kind of cure. Well, we didn't get any snow cover this year, hardly any. And I'm noticing now some of the rhizomes, they're feeling a little soft. So in hindsight, I wish I would have went ahead and just mulched over the top of these and then pulled it back. That was probably a mistake on my part. But if we would have got snow, I think they would have been fine. You can also see they're quite exposed, more than they should be, because I'm sure it rained in the fall and it spread that soil out. So live and learn. Today we are going to go ahead, we're going to mulch over them. And if a lot of these iris rhizomes have died over the winter, we'll just take that mulch, move it back, and replant, because I do have one more clump that I could dig up if I have to. So I've got some extra source and I'm happy about that. And next to us here, we've got the dwarf Russian almond. What a beautiful shrub in the spring. Just absolutely spectacular flowers on this. Last year on this shrub, we did have quite a bit of rabbit feeding where they clipped back a lot of those lower small little lateral branches, and it looked a little top heavy. Oftentimes what I'll do when that happens, I'll rejuvenate a shrub. I don't like shrubs that are out of balance, but I let it go. It filled in pretty nice. I'll likely just kind of let this keep doing its thing, filling out, keeping the Russian olive branches pruned higher, and let it just fill out. It's got so much room. There is another shrub, pink flowering almond, different species, and quite honestly, I don't know if I can tell them apart. So I'm actually going to keep my eye out in a nursery or garden center where they might have both of them and see if I can tell the difference between them. They're both pretty hardy. They both get that beautiful spring bloom. So either way, great shrub to have where you've got like cold temperatures down to zone 2 on this one. We'll cut through here on this pathway. By the way, we're going to be lifting up those little slates when we put that mulch down so we don't bury them. I'm going to get you back over to this other side. Maybe we're not looking right into the sun. This is Highland Splendor Mugo Pine. Introduction out of North Dakota State University. Characteristics on this different from, say, the Tanon Bomb, which, by the way, there's a Tanon Bomb back in the distance there. We'll take a little bit of a closer look at that in just a moment. The Highland Splendor is said to have a little bit deeper green color throughout the season, as well as about a 20% quicker growth rate than the Tanon Bomb. I don't think I'd be able to tell the difference on these, quite honestly, if they were just planted out in somebody's landscape. To me, it would just be an upright Mugo pine. Downsides that I'm finding in my landscape to the Mugo pines in general, we're starting to get quite a bit of the scale insect, which can be difficult to control. So that's just an unfortunate thing happening. But as landscapes age, you are going to get more pests. This is going to get about, 12 to 15 feet tall. It could start encroaching in with this Russian olive. Again, I'll probably just keep pruning up those Russian olive branches, let these plants thrive below. Should have plenty of sun here. This is a south face, and that's what you want for a lot of the different spruce, the pines. And let's take a little closer look at that Tanon Bomb. Just a perfect upright shape. You know what, I think I might agree. This one does have a little bit less green than that Highland Splendor. Not yellow, but more of a winter color that's common on the pines. And coming around the corner right next to that Highland Splendor, this is Buffalo Juniper. This is a really nice juniper, similar to Arcadia. Juniper gets about a foot tall. I've already done the pruning along the edging, and boy, you really got to stay on top of them once they hit that point. I'm not going to cover it in this video. I've got a few other ones you can look at. I'll put those in the description as well. But really what you're doing is you lift up one of the longer outer branches, try to get in there and prune it back in there a little bit so you don't end up with a stubby cut. Buffalo juniper then does get a little bit of a bronzy color as we come out of the winter, but that'll be a fresh, rich green as we come out of dormancy into the spring and summer. We're on the other side of the bed now, and in that overview in the beginning we missed this Jap Garden Juniper. Jap Garden Juniper's got a nice, I'm going to say oriental, kind of a bunchy look, a spiny, more sharp needle, not soft by any means, kind of a lighter green that you're seeing there as well. That's a common color for it, not a deep green, but this is a drought tolerant, good rock garden plant. You can see the branches here on the summer wine 9-bark are starting to cover it up, and it's going to have more sun or it's going to fail. And here we're next to summer wine 9-bark. I've done quite a few different videos where I've done rejuvenation on this, showing you that entire process. And the 9-barks, once they're established, grow so quickly. And they're sold a lot of times for the color of the leaves, whether it be kind of an orangish coppery, the summer wine color that you see on this one. There's also some dwarf varieties like Tiny Wine, Little Devil, if you need something that's not quite as vigorous. I'm going to be leaving these this year. They're getting a little bit big for the area, a little shaggy, but the main reason I want to leave it is they take a full year to set flower bud. So if we were to rejuvenate and cut back all these tips this year, we skip that whole year of flowering. Now the leaf color makes up for it, but I want to enjoy those flowers one more year. And I just absolutely love the cascading effect that you get on this. We are going to go ahead and go in here and make some thinning cuts. You can sometimes tell the difference in color on the wood. They kind of pick up this almost a whitish rather than a coppery color. And them are the twigs that are dead. So I'll today take out just a few of those longer ones that are getting out a little bit too far. And then after it leaves out, that's really when you can tell if it's dead tissue or not. And you can always do that thinning where you're just taking out the occasional branch after the fact, after they're leafed out. Doesn't have to be when they're dormant. It's just a good time to do it. And yeah, I'm going to have to move the trailer. This was more of a winter storage thing. What can happen if you leave that arborvitae that much shade, that close to an object, it'll start dropping those needles in there and there'll be a void for sure. So we'll pull this out of there and give it more sun for the summer. The North Pole arborvitae then. This is a nice upright variety, going to hold its green color all winter long. Gets about 4 to 5 feet wide. We're definitely at that range right now. It's supposed to level off at about a 15-foot height. I think this one's actually going to go a little bit taller than that. This is a variety of the winter green arborvitae. I'm going to go ahead and let's show you an example of that arborvitae as well. And we're coming up on that winter green arborvitae there. This thing's really starting to fill in nicely, but look at the comparison here. Quite a bit more broad on the base with a more defined teardrop shape than the North Pole we were looking at. I think the coloring's good on this, but I'm going to also say this has a much more loose, informal feel to it compared to the North Pole arborvitae. Are we picking up a winter color? Yeah, you know, maybe just a little bit more than that North Pole variety. But the wintergreen, this is in an incredibly dry area. These big spruce you see behind here just absolutely dominate as far as taking the moisture, nutrients out of the ground. So I'm really, really happy with how this one's doing back here. And you know, we always got to mention the winter sun. Bugle pine there, look at that thing. That's the winter color. That'll actually change into a green needle as it starts flushing out. A lot of fun seeing these plants over the years. There we go. Nice, nice bright lit sun now, no problem. Walks up. What I do first when I've got an established pathway with just some flagstone, I put the mulch on first. And then I'm going to wrestle it out of the ground. A little bit of that mulch will fall in, and then we'll seed it in that same hole. It's going to keep it from drifting. It takes a little bit of time for these thinner flagstones to seed in. So that way they're going to be a little bit more firm. They're not going to float around. And once you find your paver, pop that out. Just a little bit of mulch. Mainly because we want to elevate it a little bit higher, and then you'll have a nice clean edge. And since this is one of our main pathways, as the mulch settles, we might add just a little bit more. And this area gets beat up pretty good as you're not always stepping directly on that platform. let's go ahead and we'll give you one final look around. See how this turned out? Yeah, I think it's the uniformity, you know, just the color, the evenness all the way around. I sure love it, getting that top dress mulch on there. And look at the stark difference. We're not done, not by a long shot. I've got about 7 or 8 more beds to do. And just look at how dreary and brown this one is. A lot of soil exposed there. So just a stark contrast. Look at that, a lot of areas. Mulch has completely broken down, especially up on those higher ridges. So we'll quick swing back to our nice Western red cedar look. It really stands out. Once that lawn greens up, trees start leafing out. This is just beautiful. How these beds turn out with top dressing that mulch. I just absolutely love it. What do you think? Well, it looks like we passed inspection, yeah. Yeah, we'll get it territory marked out here. I appreciate you stopping by Garden Hike. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.